At the beginning of the film, a statement appears saying that the movie is based on true events. Every year, 30,000 people go missing in Australia. 90% of them are found within a month, but the rest are never seen again. In 1999, we're taken to a place in Australia where a girl named Liz is about to go on a trip with her two friends. It's a low-cost tour, meaning it's a very budget-friendly journey. One of her friends even buys a cheap car for the trip. They begin their journey, and as night falls, they decide to stop and camp for the night. The next morning, they continue driving and eventually reach a small store. One of Liz's friends films everything with a camera, while Liz and her friend go inside the store. The local people inside stare at them strangely. Soon, Liz's male friend enters too. The locals start talking inappropriately about the girls. Not wanting any trouble, Liz and her friends leave the store. After a long drive, they finally arrive at their destination, Wolf Creek, a huge park in the desert. They relax and enjoy their time there. But as evening approaches, something strange happens. Their watches stop working at exactly 6:30 p.m. They ignore it and return to their car, only to discover that it won't start. Just like their watches, the car has gone dead. Realizing they're stuck in a remote desert with no way to reach help on foot, they decide to spend the night in the car. Later that night, they see a light approaching and become frightened. As it gets closer, they realize it's a truck. A local man named Mick is driving it. Mick seems friendly and offers to help. He checks the car and says he can fix it, but only if they come with him to his place, where his tools are. With no better option, they agree. Mick ties their car to his truck, and they begin driving. Hours pass, and they still haven't reached Mick's place. It's completely dark, and they're unsure of where they are, which makes them nervous. Eventually, they arrive at Mick's home, which turns out to be an old mining area. Mick offers them drinks and starts telling stories from his life. He says he's a hunter and has killed many animals. Though he tells these stories in a joking way, some of what he says sounds off. One of Liz's friends tries to joke back, but Mick doesn't like his tone and gives him a cold stare. Throughout the conversation, Mick drops hints, like saying he hunts animals that come to Wolf Creek. But he doesn't mean animals. He's talking about travelers. The group still doesn't take him seriously and thinks he's just being funny. Later, Mick pretends to work on their car, but it's just a trick. He has already drugged their drinks. They all pass out. The next day, Liz wakes up tied inside a shed. The place is a mess, and she can't see her friends. She cries and screams for help, but no one answers. After a whole day, night falls again. Liz manages to free herself using a piece of glass she finds nearby. She then discovers that Mick has taken apart their car, and there's blood on their belongings. Trying to escape, she suddenly hears her female friend screaming. She finds Mick torturing her in another cell. There are also several dead bodies of other travelers. Realizing what Mick does, Liz comes up with a plan. She lights the car on fire and throws a gas cylinder into it. The explosion draws Mick away. While he's distracted, Liz rushes to free her friend. But before she can finish, Mick returns. She hides, and when Mick resumes hurting her friend, Liz seizes the moment and points a gun at him. As Mick moves toward her, she shoots him. The bullet hits near his neck, knocking him unconscious, but not killing him. Liz frees her friend and they get into Mick's truck to escape, but there's no key. Liz goes back inside to search for it. She finds it on Mick's body, starts the truck, and drives away, even though she has no idea where to go in the dark. Mick follows them in another truck. Liz drives fast and barely stops the truck in time before it falls into a large pit. She then comes up with another idea. They take the keys and push the truck into the pit to trick Mick. Then they hide nearby. Mick arrives, sees the truck down below, but doesn't trust the scene, so he climbs down himself. Liz decides to take another truck nearby, but there are no keys. With no choice left, she decides to go back to Mick's place, hoping to find keys from one of the many other cars he has. She tells her friend to wait outside, saying, "If I'm not back in 10 minutes, run." Inside the mining site, Liz finds many cars and belongings from past victims. She realizes Mick has been doing this for a long time, pretending to help, then killing travelers. She even finds her male friend's camera. Looking through it, she sees footage showing Mick's truck in the background of earlier scenes. He had been following them from the start. Liz finds a car and tests the keys one by one. Finally, one works, but Mick is already inside. He stabs her. She manages to escape the car, but he attacks again. Liz tries to block him, but her fingers get slashed. Mick catches her and stabs her spine, paralyzing her. Meanwhile, her friend outside sees that Liz hasn't returned after 10 minutes and runs. She keeps running until morning, when she finds a road, but no cars are around. Eventually, an old man stops to help her. As he goes to the trunk for water, Mick shows up and shoots him. The girl rushes to the car, but the key is in the trunk. She grabs it, starts the car, and drives off, but Mick follows. He rams her car, but she hits his, forcing him off the road. Thinking she's finally safe, she continues, but Mick shoots out her tire. The car crashes. Mick walks up and shoots her. He places her body in the car and sets it on fire. We then learn that Liz's male friend is still alive. He escapes and runs all night. The next day, 2 travelers spot him and take him to the hospital. Despite a massive investigation, the police are unable to find the 2 girls. With only one witness, who didn't know the exact location and had no solid proof, the case goes nowhere. 4 months later, Liz's friend is released. In the final scene, we see Mick walking freely, despite everything he's done. And that's how part 1 ends. Now, I will describe part 2, which begins with the same statement as in part 1, that this film is based on real incidents. We see 2 policemen performing duty on the main road. A truck passes by and they check its speed. Although it's moving slower than 100, they still follow it for overspeeding. They stop the truck. Inside was only Mick. They insult him, saying the truck looks like it was thrown into a ditch, which was true, as Liz had pushed it there. They accuse him of speeding and give him a challan, though Mick knows he wasn't over the limit. The officers don't listen. They hand him the fine and drive away, laughing. Suddenly, a bullet strikes one officer in the head. His skull shatters. The car crashes, and the second officer manages to crawl out. Mick approaches, makes him sit back inside, pours petrol on the car, throws the challan inside, and sets the car on fire. Mick calmly drives off after killing both policemen. Then we see a couple. The girl's name is Katrina. They're also on a low-cost tour heading toward Wolf Creek, but can't find a ride. So, they walk on foot. They spot a truck nearby. It belongs to Mick. Just as they approach it, another truck passes by. Due to the witness, Mick avoids picking them up and drives away. They end up riding in the other truck. Eventually, they reach Wolf Creek, a desert that seems to swallow everything. After enjoying themselves, they decide to leave. Still without a ride, they camp overnight in a tent. Mick passes by and sees the tent's light. He walks over and says camping isn't allowed here, and they might be fined. He offers them a lift to the city. But Katrina's husband refuses, saying they'll leave in the morning as they aren't breaking any rules. Mick doesn't like his response and suddenly stabs him. Katrina rushes to her husband, but Mick grabs and ties her up, punishing her too. Her husband tries to fight back, but he's too weak. Mick beats him badly and slits his throat. Katrina panics. Mick grabs her and makes her unconscious. When she wakes up, she sees Mick cutting up her husband's body. She quietly escapes, but Mick realizes and follows her in his truck. She runs and manages to confuse him. Meanwhile, an American traveler named Paul is driving on that road. Katrina runs into his path, asking for help. Paul stops and lets her in, but Mick soon appears in his truck. Katrina begs Paul to drive fast. Mick pulls up next to them, threatening with a knife. Paul speeds up and escapes briefly, but the road ahead is blocked. They stop. Mick pulls out a gun and fires. Paul ducks to avoid the shot, and Katrina is struck in the face. She dies instantly. Paul, shaken, reverses the car and escapes. Mick fires again, but Paul survives. After driving some distance, Paul gently places Katrina's body outside. He's heartbroken he couldn't save her. He finds the main road but is unsure where to go. He stops to check the map when a car passes by without stopping. Then he sees a truck approaching. It's Mick again. Paul rushes back to the car, but Mick crashes into him. Paul drives erratically to escape, narrowly avoiding kangaroos. Mick runs over them instead. Unfortunately, Paul's fuel runs low, and a tire bursts. The car stops. Mick smashes into it with his truck, sending it into a ditch. Paul survives the crash. As he climbs out, Mick throws his truck down too, causing an explosion, but Paul escapes again. He runs through the desert and finds a house. Collapsing outside, he later wakes up in bed, taken in by an old couple. They're having a meal when Mick suddenly arrives. Paul panics. The old man draws a gun and tells Mick to leave. Mick obeys but later returns and shoots the old man. The old lady tries to escape, but is also killed. Paul runs, but Mick sees him. Paul hides in bushes. Mick rides after him on horseback. Hearing Paul's breathing, Mick stabs him unconscious. Paul wakes up tied to a chair surrounded by weapons. Mick says there's one rule in the outback: never stop for strangers. But Paul did for Katrina. Mick wants to punish him for it. Trying to be funny, Mick proposes a quiz, 10 questions about Australian history. If Paul answers 5 correctly, Mick promises to let him go. Paul, a history student, agrees. Mick brings out a grinder and warns that wrong answers cost a finger. Paul answers correctly but still loses a finger. Mick didn't like his cleverness. Then Mick asks who Australia's best cricketer is. Paul admits he doesn't know. Mick gives him a hint, but Paul still fails. Mick cuts off another finger. Paul had answered wrong on purpose. Once both hands were free, he could escape. When Mick leaves to get a drink, Paul grabs a hammer. As Mick returns, Paul attacks him and escapes. He sees many dead bodies of travelers, but one girl is still alive and begs for help. Mick unleashes his dogs. One dog falls into a trap and dies, grabs Paul, and knocks him out again. This time, Paul wakes up in a town completely naked. There's a note in his hand that says loser. Mick was mocking him, implying that outsiders are losers. We then learn that Paul told the police everything about Mick. But instead of catching Mick, police blamed Paul for all the Wolf Creek murders. In truth, Paul was innocent, a victim. After the traumatic events and failed investigations, Paul became mentally unstable and was sent to an institution. Meanwhile, Mick, the real killer, was still roaming freely despite committing so many murders. And part 2 ends here. So that's it. Hope you enjoy the story. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more videos.